Hey everyone, it is the Spin Cycle. Andrew Southwick and R.C. Williams back with you. I am so sorry we missed yesterday. That was my fault. As you can see, I'm not at the regular set. I don't have my regular anything this week. I'm doing a lot of traveling this week, and so it's going to be kind of awkward timing for the show, but we will do our best to get everyone out. And yesterday it just the wheels fell off, and we said, you know what, let's just come back tomorrow and hit this hard. The stories yesterday actually are still relevant today, so we're gonna touch on those. And first, let's see, which one do I want to use? Oh yeah, the shot in the image. Here we go. Hot
Yes.
takes, yes, the Fauci, Dr. Fauci. He's back in the news. He's back in the news, of course, because Rand Paul released what has been portrayed to be his diary. This from Red State. You can see there Anthony Fauci's diary and the repugnance of clout chasing. I just want to highlight a couple of tweets and sections here. This is Rand Paul's tweet here. Said that his committee combed through millions of COVID documents and they found that Fauci destroyed records. He told others to delete emails, and he then told them to delete them from the deleted files and blah blah blah. All kinds of stuff. Here's his, please delete this email after you read it. And let's see, here's this right here in the middle. Hopefully you can see that okay. Let me make that a little bit bigger here. If it'll let me.
The Fouch really stepped in this one.
Yeah, he says he had a great call. Did that help at all? No, it didn't. Anyway, whatever. He had a great call with Barbara Streisand. She called my cell at 6:05. She apparently she had some sort of neuralgia, and she wanted to know if it was okay to get the shot after she had her little illness. And he starts bragging about Alexa and the difference between Moderna and Pfizer. And so he's really having a good old time here. Here he is writing in 2020. Big front page article about me appeared in the Washington Post. Very flattering. The situation with my national and international fame is explosive and really unimaginable. It is not hyperbole to say today that I'm the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognizable person in the world. Countless profiles on me in multiple media. I can't even read all the things written about me since I'm so busy. Seriously. POTUS, that's the President of the United States, seems to be enamored of me, even though I'm taking the spotlight away from him. We're developing a unique and interesting relationship. The entire service corps is coming over to me and chatting. They let me into the first gate without even checking ID. Everyone's worried about my health and welfare, probably because it's all over the place that I'm almost 80 years old. And it goes on like that. There are entries after entries of similar things. And, the big narrative, obviously, is that Fauci clearly was preoccupied with himself. And, there's two things. The political class, I see this like with Republicans especially, but the political class, and probably people like Fauci, they always want to be at the cool table in the lunch cafeteria, And this seems like he finally got his chance to sit with the cool kids and to be popular, for a week or something in school. And so he's just writing in his diary he's meeting all the cool kids, and they're all coming to him, and they're saying how great he is, and he doesn't have to check ID, and they're just giving him free chocolate milk and an extra piece of rectangle pizza, and all that kind of stuff. And he's just gushing over this. And I've heard a few different takes on why didn't Trump fire him, because they became adversarial, and of course all these kinds of things. And I don't care about laying any blame on Trump or not. That's old news, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. A couple of things. One, I think the tragic part of this is that we did have a person who through that time would come on the daily press briefings, and you remember, RC, they were every day with the death counter and all this kind of stuff, and the case counter, which was fraudulent anyway. But so all that stuff is going on, and you really don't read about that much in these pages. You read about him and what he is doing, and when you would think that when you have when if that much death and calamity is going on, that you wouldn't read back in your diary and have it read like, I went to the prom and here's all the cool people I hung out with. But I mean, that to me, that's how it read, and and then the other piece on this is well, I'm going to stop right there first. Let me get you to jump in. I know you probably had a chance to see some of these highlights and so on.
Andrew, I want to remind people of two very distinct things. Let me start with the older one first. I wanted to remind you that Dr. Anthony Fauci is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people who've contracted HIV because of AZT. Not making that up, it's documented. So he's been Killer Kowalski, of this segment for ages. So that's one. Please don't forget that. You're dealing with someone who has a penchant and an understanding for doing these types of things. And obviously, by looking at number two, is that kid that used to get stuffed in the garbage can and then got invited to the cool kids table because he did something cool in school. Now, fast forward, the other stuff didn't leave him. Okay, he's just a raging egomaniac now, and he's basically got the entire nation's ear during a time where many people would just agree with whatever he said. This kind of stuff came out about Debbie Birx, completely and utterly useless, except for the engine of evil that wanted to poison you. And now here comes Anthony Fauci, and you see in his own words, he is so worried about him and all of him and people caring about him. You know what's not in there? Looking out for people. Mm-hmm. So much for the Hippocratic Oath. But then again, the guy hasn't practiced medicine in 35 years? So, I mean, yeah.
You would, I mean, listen, if that kind of celebrity and fame came to you, of course you would talk about it. And I'm sure in the beginning, it would be a little bit fun. I mean, everybody likes to be admired and known and so on and so forth. But you know what? When the great people throughout history, when they were admired and known and they're talking about the things they're doing and what was going on, like you never read Abraham Lincoln talking about himself like that, writing about himself like that. You never hear the founders, even, you go back even to the mid-1900s, and remember when politicians, at least if they weren't telling the truth, at least they were aspirational. Now we just ridicule each other, and I think that's part of the rotten decay. But here's one of the problems I have with this, though. Here's Senator Rand Paul again bringing stuff up, and I guess we're going to go back to another hearing. I don't know. I don't know what the point of I don't know what the point of this is, other than to reinforce something we probably already knew. But here's the thing: Biden, auto pen or not, gave Fauci a preemptive pardon, which I think is the first time in history someone has been pardoned for something they hadn't done, but might have done, but probably did, and needed to be pardoned before charges are brought against him. So I do have to wonder if he has been pardoned for this. The only thing that means is that he can't plead the fifth. That means if he were in a hearing, would have to tell the truth, you would think, but he probably doesn't recall. So, well, he was, obviously he'll recall what he talked about with Barbara Streisand, but he doesn't recall the rest of it. But what would be the point of that then, if he can't be prosecuted? And obviously, we know that we're not really seriously looking into the whole Biden auto pen thing. We're not seriously. Even going back to, you remember a couple of weeks ago, President Trump's big speech on Chinese election interference. A week later, he was downplaying it, saying, well, we did a lot of stuff too, so, nothing came of it. Just like we talked about on this program, this doesn't matter unless there are arrests made and people prosecuted. And so, no. So I don't know that we're actually serious about this at all. And I would wonder, too, I mean, I'd like to think that Rand Paul at least, wants to get some justice, but if he's already pardoned, how do you get justice? What do you do? I mean, he can admit stuff all he wants. It won't matter.
I mean, your best bet, Andrew, is something that they had worked on in Southwest Florida when Fauci came, is that you can bring him up on state charges, right? Can the states do something here? Because a federal pardon doesn't impact a state's ability to do that. Is there a crime, and can he be prosecuted for a crime. That was the fervor like a year and a half ago, because he was speaking down in Southwest Florida, and they had like a full on protest and everything. And they're like, hey, you know what? If we can get our AG to move, our state AG, can we do anything? Has a crime been committed here?
Mm-hmm.
So my hope would be that a state has the fortitude to actually do something about it. But unfortunately, yeah, a lot of it is window dressing. Here's what I think is good, Andrew. And this was the same thing that happened to Debbie Burks and some of these other clowns that were part of this foolishness, where it was basically a weapon of mass destruction leveraged on the American people with that whole insanity. Is that now it's out there? You can see these maniacal egomaniac people and the degree and level of evil they were willing to stoop to for power, for fame, and for money. And I'm glad that that's in the public record. My prayer is that people don't forget that and don't allow them to walk down the street without the ridicule, because that's what needs to happen. If you're going to commit that type of crime against an entire country, let alone probably the world, right, then you deserve what comes with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And listen, the next time some major emergency happens, we got to realize that if this is true of this ilk of people, it's probably true of the next generation too. I don't really see
Yep.
the Washington swamp getting drained, no matter how many posters or things we see about that. All right, next story. RC, this is one you brought to the table. AI
Yeah.
companies destroying books. Now, I did read an article, or a report rather, about how Amazon, for example, is buying up a bunch of old books and buying the rights and then taking them out of print and destroying them. RC, this comes from We Are Watchmen Substack, wearewatchmen.substack.com. Take us through this.
Yeah, Andrew. So we got wind from a friend of ours who is also strong in the spirit. He said, hey, you guys need to take a look at this story about them taking in books, using them to train LLMs, large language models, and then basically just destroying them. So we took a look at the piece from Futurism, and we looked at some court documents. Anthropic has kind of been at the front of this, and there was actually a lawsuit. But Andrew, here's what's happening. The Amazons of the world, or Anthropic, or some of the other AI companies, are buying up these books to train models, right? So they're basically slicing and dicing them so that they can get them in faster. But then what's happening after is they're just being done away with. So the concern naturally becomes here is that is some of the stuff, or all of the stuff that's being done away with, are we ever able to get it back? Are there even any copies left? And so we asked the obvious question in the piece from a biblical standpoint. Our forefathers spent ages ensuring that historical record was there for us, right? And so if that is where we come from, how in the world does any of this make sense? So that's danger number one, right? Danger number two, if you don't have a physical copy of something, Andrew, we've talked about this a lot on the Culture Crossroads, this you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, right? Or the rental or leasing economy.
Mm-hmm.
Once you don't have it physically anymore and you've only got it digitally, they can start to change things. And what are they changing? Or what are the large language models going to potentially change that they don't like because their algorithms are programmed by people who have a dislike for those things, right? Including the truth, right? So their bias gets leveraged in. And so we looked at that in the article through a biblical lens, and we said, listen, you should be concerned about this because in some ways it's kind of like the book burning. But it's being given to you under the guise that if we do this, we can get you all the information anyway and give you a ton of context, and you really don't need the books. My friend, we all know how that ends, and it's not good.
I planted a church some years ago, and my co-pastor was um, involved in a ministry in Haiti, and it was an orphanage in Haiti, and so the church would regularly send mission teams to Haiti in partnership with that orphanage to do work. And he and I would talk about what it would take to change a country like Haiti, where you really have to be careful. One of the reasons why we sent teams directly is, for example, in a country like Haiti, this has bearing, I promise, but bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
In a country like Haiti, like if you were to send them food, for example, rice is a big deal down there. If you were to send rice, you want to get it directly to the people, because if you do it through governments, like I think like Clinton has a foundation that goes to Haiti, and you know, my co-pastor there would just say how fraudulent that was, but it just the
Hmm.
government just takes it. Like it doesn't ever get to the people, so you
Correct.
have to get it. You have to go person to person and get it into people's hands. And we say, you know, what would it take for that to change in Haiti? And he said it would take the current generation and maybe part of the next dying out and forgetting about the
Mm.
context right now. Well, if you
Hmm.
were if you were Agenda 2030, if you had to also defeat the middle class, if you which is very difficult because in America the middle class is also armed,
Right.
and in America the middle class will do two, three, four, five, six jobs before we fall on the government rolls. Not that we want to do that, but you know we're not going to give up our freedom just so that we can have a free internet. But if you wanted to do that, one of the things you would need to do is erase history. The way to erase history is to wait out those who remember it on the one end, and then erase the back end. And I'm not saying that Amazon that they're sitting up there, like Mr. Burns and doing that kind of thing, but it certainly makes it so an opportunist would say, "Oh, great, this is fantastic. You're already doing half the job for us, getting rid of all that physical media." And there is a push to get rid of all physical media. You notice, even for example, in Hollywood, one of the reasons why DVDs. Remember, they used to have bonus features and stuff. Well, it's no
Yep.
longer profitable for them to do that, to make those, because they're not selling the physical media, or not very much of it anyway. And they'll all be limited releases, and usually you find it at Walmart or Target. That's about it. So because everybody's streaming, right? So it's changed the market. But because everybody's streaming, that's not physical. The same is true with books. But books, especially, that really is our time machine to civilizations and eras of the past. And if we erase all that, then we have to trust that the people today are accurately carrying that information forward, which I do
Right.
not at all. And again, but if you're able to do that and corner the market and take those books off the shelves, well, then really all you have to do is wait for a generation and a half of people to pass away. And now you've completely rewritten history and thereby set up your preferred future, which is exactly what the Great Reset and Agenda 2030 is all about.
Andrew, they do it a little bit at a time, right? It's the frog in the pot. They get you comfortable with, oh, you can just rent, or you can lease, or you can do this, or hey, just do this or do that. You don't really need to own it because, well, you own nothing and be happy. It's like Agenda 2030 has been working in the background the whole time, right? They've just said, oh, they said we can't go this way, right? Let's try a different angle and let's lull them to sleep. And so ultimately, what do you get? I don't know if you've noticed this lately, but the service on everything is complete garbage, right? Just
Yeah.
everything, everywhere you go. It's just like the service is terrible. Unless you happen to go to a mom and pop where the people know the people in a community, the service and even the quality of stuff is just slop right now. But it's gotten even worse, Andrew. The technical experiences using
Mm-hmm.
technology for some of these things has gotten equally bad. It's almost like nobody cares anymore. And it is because they lull you to sleep. I think what you said about Haiti, by the way, is really important, is that the best way to get rid of history is to let the people who remember it die off. And then as they're dying off, you're slowly just removing it. So before you know it, anybody
Mm-hmm.
who would know anything doesn't have any idea, one, what happened, and two, that what actually happened was just conveniently smudged out of history while they weren't paying attention.
Yeah, yeah. And, you mentioned too with customer service. My goodness, my wife and I were just talking about this because I had a terrible customer service experience just recently, which is partly why I'm on the road here.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is like they don't care about the customer, because I think actually you're no longer the customer. You're actually the product,
Yep.
and if you're defective, they'll just toss you out. They really don't care about giving you good service. And it's not that a business cares about your life and wants to sit down and have a heart to heart. But those mom and pops and those locally owned do exist, because the ones that, gee, if you were gonna return something a couple hours late, the manager might say, you know what, don't worry about it. Hey, I'll make sure that's on time for you. Just as a decency, person to person, that's gone. Now
Yeah.
it really is. You think your life is customizable, but really, They think your life is programmable and predictable, and that's what they're working to be able to do.
Andrew, you are so right. And as I'm thinking about this, it's like you go through this experience, you call, you either don't get a human or whatever. But have you noticed that TV is almost unwatchable, radio is almost unlistenable, and it's like, what are they doing? And it goes back to what you just said. They don't care because they're being subsidized by their handlers. If you ever want to know what they're not going to talk about, just listen to the commercials. There's some Sherlock 101 for you. Right. But isn't it interesting what happens when they no longer care about the quality of the product or even the topic, or even if you listen or watch, because that's not what this is about. Yeah. It's about the fact that they're subsidized by their masters to push agendas and things that are going to be detrimental to you. And they honestly don't care.
Well, I see. Speaking of subsidies, I don't have any graphics for this one because I just compiled the information on notes on my phone, so I don't have flashy things for you right now, or for the viewers. I'm sorry about that, but bear with me here. We've talked a lot about flock cameras. In fact, on the Culture Crossroads 316 channel, there is a whole deep dive into how expansive the flock camera disbursement is in America, how many scans they take every day. Excuse me. So, but did you realize, and a lot of people don't know this, that flock is not the only game in town. And in fact, one of the companies that is quickly replacing flock is Axon. Axon is usually associated with body cameras, and so you see police body cameras and things like that. Now, what's interesting is the money trail behind Axon. President Donald Trump's Federal Financial Disclosure Report reports an Axon Enterprise stock purchased on February 10, 2026, valued somewhere between $1 and $5 million. Axon has investors, surprise, surprise, Vanguard and BlackRock, who are attempting to own the world. They were Axon's two largest disclosed institutional holders, with approximately 11.6% and 9.3% of the company, respectively. Man, blah. It's more than a manufacturer of tasers, though. I've got a list here of all the stuff they do. Let me find it.
Oh boy, Andrew, as you're looking for that, interesting, real quick, is that I think most people, they may not realize Vanguard and State Street are two of the biggest stewards of retirement funds and 401ks. So guess what? Your money's being weaponized against you, and then they're giving you a little change on the back end. How convenient.
Yeah, and again, this is part of the surveillance state. And now, to be fair, President Trump's investment, he's not a controlling investor in it. But it's interesting, hey, I'll make some money off that too, or my organization will, okay? So Axon markets interconnected law enforcement. And by the way, notice how all these surveillance state cameras are pairing up with law enforcement, the enforcement mechanism of the surveillance state. But taser devices, body-worn cameras, in-car camera systems, we've talked about that as well, fixed license plate recognition cameras, gee, I wonder where we've heard that before, police drones, and drone as first responder. Drone as first responder. Imagine dialing 911 and they send a drone. Thanks. Robotics and counter-drone technology, digital evidence storage, listen guys, this is records management software, real-time crime center platforms, AI tools, police report drafting and transcription systems, video, geolocation, dispatch, and sensor data integration. Axon describes its network as connecting weapons, cameras, fixed sensors, drones, robotics, evidence systems, records, real-time operations, and AI capabilities into a unified public safety platform. Is there anything about life they're not capturing? About your life or mine? The integration is where the constitutional concern comes, because this single platform can combine, and listen to this, your vehicle movements, your license plate history, any body cam footage, officer locations, private and public camera feeds, dispatch records, 911 information, drone video, facial recognition results, police reports, and other digital evidence. I mean, it is unbelievable. Axon, for how large their company is, they reported $2.1 billion in 2024 revenue, more than $1 billion in annual recurring revenue, more than $10.1 billion in future contracted bookings, which means they're planning on more of this. More than 1 million software users, approximately 300,000 body cameras were shipped in 2024, approximately 200,000 tasers were shipped in 2024, and in the first quarter of this year, $807 million in quarterly revenue, a 34% year-over-year increase, $355 million in software and services, which is a growth of 35%, AI product growth of more than 700%, counter drone revenue grew at 300%, and of course their raised revenue forecast is 32% overall. So it is a large, rapidly expanding company. And by the way, you follow the money. President Trump his organization is an investor in this as well, and we need to be paying attention, because if we are looking for our leaders to do something against the surveillance state, it is troubling, to say the least, to find that our leaders are invested in the surveillance state.
Andrew, I've been working to temper myself as you were talking, so I don't just go after all of these places or industries. But this in some way dovetails to what we talked about in our last story. The quality of everything has gone to crap. But now it seems like there's just this rapid fire money grab. Now, from our side with Sherlock as a business, we have turned down Internet of Things business, large numbers, okay? Because we knew ultimately where that would end up. And we had to ask the hard question, spiritually and ethically, like, do we really believe what we believe? And if we do, how could we be a part of that, knowing exactly where they were going to take it? But there's always going to be a filthy money pig out there of some kind who is willing to do this. So things that should scare you. I said a moment ago, Vanguard and State Street, largest stewards of 401ks, retirements, and pensions, right? They're using your money, weaponizing it against you, and giving you some chump change on the back end so that your portfolio goes up. Yeah, you can enjoy that when you're in your 15-minute city and not able to eat meat. Have fun with that. Obviously, President Trump's organization, or his blind trust, or I don't know if it's 1789 Capital. There's so many different avenues there. You also have to ask the hard question. Not all investments are good investments, even if they return you a lot of money, right? Do you really want to be affiliated with this when the prevailing narrative is that you're allowing government to continue to encroach at all levels, or you're at least encouraging them? Because people say, well, look, that's federal. These law enforcement organizations are local. And I say, yes, but the feds have a ton of influence, most likely on your police department or your county sheriff, because they're providing them all of these tools, right? And all they have to do to get the tools and get the money is say yes. Mm-hmm. How convenient, right? And so we've got all these things going on. But, Andrew, and I'll stop. So here we are, defense, right? So defense is another one, big, right? More bombs, more killing, hey, more money. Surveillance, we've got that now. Health, pharmaceutical, right? Legalized drug dealers. It seems like it is okay as long as every hog can get its space at the trough. But you got to ask the hard question, Andrew. Where does this ultimately lead? What's the end game here?
Mm-hmm. Well, we just talked about erasing history in the story before this. We just, when you break down what Axon and Flock are doing, and there are a couple other companies as well, but then you also have the big data companies like Palantir and so on, Oracle. What's the one that I'm forgetting the name that the Pentagon didn't like for a little while? Which one was that, RC? Do you remember?
Oh, geez.
I feel like it starts with an A, but I can't remember. It doesn't matter.
Me either. Yeah.
Anyway.
Anthropic. Yeah, that's Claude.
Yeah, right. So all these companies together, working all the same way, and again, partnering with governments to do it, using government agencies, whether federal, state, or local, to on the enforcement or the implementation of them. And then you have huge data centers that we don't need, other than unless you were going to store an amount of data that would be that detailed, that rich on that many millions of people. I think this all goes to the laying down of the infrastructure of the surveillance state, and it's the thing that I will not shut up about, because and one of the reasons that I'm critical of the Republicans, because it's happening on their watch, and eventually you're not going to have somebody who is okay with. Right now, I think our government is kind of okay with liberty and freedom. Eventually, They're going to get sick of it. And because we've seen through history, when rulers and leaders have that kind of power and they have the opportunity and they have the means to tighten the screws on their citizens and turn them into serfs and subjects, that's exactly what they do. The thing that bothers me is that either of our parties. Exactly. Welcome to the rebellion. All you have to do is talk about the product around your cell phone and you get the ads. Absolutely. And do you remember, though, I mean, I think 10, 15 years ago, we would joke about that. We would joke about saying, hey, I just talked about, buying a stainless steel pot and pan, and all of a sudden I got an ad. They were already, and people said, oh, no, they're not doing that. You're crazy. Now they admit it out loud. We know they're doing that. And not only are they doing it, but they're watching you on your cameras, because even if that little green light or that blue light isn't on, it can still be operational and gathering data. They're monitoring your every keystroke. They're not even hiding the fact that if you're using a free email platform, that they're reading your emails, because you now get an AI email summary that appears before you actually open your email. All the things we thought they were doing, they're doing. And again, this is infrastructure and that's my problem with this. That one day, if we don't put a stop to this, it will be used against us. And what I really hate right now is that it's that at least in this particular iteration, it is the Republicans who are allowing this stuff to go through, who are not decrying any of it, who are not calling a session to figure out what kind of either regulations or policies or protections need to be on these companies so that they don't violate any of our constitutional rights. And to think that the people that I voted for helped to supply the chain that eventually they're going to put the handcuffs to, that eventually they're going to want our hands in, I have no words. But that's why I'm hard on Republicans. It's not because I'm not conservative. It's because I am conservative, and it's because I don't want my team laying in the infrastructure that's going to go for the future oppression of all people, from coast to coast.
Andrew, I'll take people back quickly. Mid-spring of 2024, what did we say on Culture Crossroads? We said, here's the challenge with J.D. Vance. If J.D. Vance is the pick, you're going to give Peter Thiel and his people an outsized influence on an incoming Trump administration. If you do that, your technocracy will show up in a red dress instead of a blue dress, and you will take it. Do not let that happen. You have to be vigilant. We used to say it episode after episode after episode. We've written about it extensively. You've talked about it extensively. And yet here we are once again. And we talk off the air. So does it say that we talk off the air all the time, but we want to be wrong. We so want to be wrong because we need these things. We need to be wrong, right? That's how serious this is. Guys, if you don't deal with this now, it is going to certainly deal with you and anybody else you love, and those grandkids that you haven't met yet. They're going to get that world if you don't do something about it.
So these are great questions to ask. If you want some action steps, something you can do practically in your community to push back, number one, we've got midterms coming up. You should be asking, if you still have primaries coming up like Florida does, you should be asking those candidates, where do they stand on the surveillance state, on all these things, on flood cameras, on Axon technology, and all these things. And number two, get familiar with the doctrine of lesser magistrates. Yes, read a little bit about our history and our founding, but the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. Your local sheriff is the most important defense you have in your community. You want a sheriff and you want to vote for a sheriff, but I would hope you would want, at least I want, and right now do have, a sheriff that whatever the feds say and whatever the state says, the sheriff is only accountable to the people in their district, in their precinct.
Correct.
So they don't answer to the feds, they don't answer to the state. They don't have to enforce anything that they find unconstitutional. So get to know your sheriff, make sure you got a good one, because we're going to need to batten the hatches, and I think we're going to have to do it locality by locality, because the feds are gone and many of the states are following suit. Our communities have to tighten up. That's where the pushback's going to come from. You can start doing that today. RC, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Andrew, you are so right. And then I was going to give the places where people could see stuff. So
Yeah, do it. Go for it.
yeah. All right. So obviously, Spin Cycle, you can see this on our Facebooks and our YouTubes and our X's and everything like that. You can also see it on Culture Crossroads. The stuff's running along the screen there on YouTube. Also, we are on the Beck Cable Network. The Watchmen Action Network 24/7 is now on the Beck Cable Network in North Dakota. Bismarck, Fargo, those metros. You want to catch the show. The Spin Cycle airs every weeknight at 9:30. So if you caught parts of this and you want to catch the full show, you can go. If you're on the Beck Cable Network, you can watch Channel 40. If not, you can go to watchmanaction.org. Just click on the network button, and you can actually watch the Watchmen Action Network whenever you want.
All right, and that's going to do it for us. For RC, I'm Andrew Southwick. Thanks to those of you who stopped in for a few minutes or for a little while, and for those of you checking us out on demand. Tomorrow's Spin Cycle is going to be late in the day, and that is due to just my traveling and my schedule. So it's going to be more of an afternoon, late afternoon, or perhaps a pre-dinner time show. We apologize for the lateness, but we'll do our best to get back to middays as soon as we can. Thanks for being with us for today, and we'll see you tomorrow.